let's press on. Let's get this last bit done.
Let's get this greatest show on the road.
Ooh, indeed.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Talking About Who. This is season 25, part 2. I didn't do season 20. Anyway, part 2. Last time we talked about Remembrance of the Daleks and the Happiness Patrol. Remembrance scored 30, the Happiness Patrol 23.5. But we've got 2 more stories. Is anything going to match the dizzy heights of our opener? I am Paul or P-Bal. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I'm joined as ever by...
Hello, it's James again.
And hello, it's Jason again.
Is it Annie Walker with a perm?
Annie would look disapprovingly at this.
I think she would, but it looks like maybe she's been on Val's iron and had a bit of a volume.
Oh no, it's another fire in the flats here going on.
Anyway, our first story today it's the 25th anniversary special. It is Silver Nemesis. Around about the same time, I think Miss Marple was taking on Nemesis on BBC One. I hope nobody got confused and watched the wrong one, because they'd have had a bit of a shock, old chap. Who is starting us off on the Silver Nemesis?
I'll get us going on this one then. So the arrival of a mysterious comet brings enemies from the past and present together to fight for the Silver Nemesis. Obviously got to be a Silver Nemesis in this story, because it is indeed the story that first is on the anniversary date of the 23rd of November.
Can I just check, Jason, are you just reading it off the back of the DVD box?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not as tweeted.
It aired in November 20...
A thrilling space-time adventure in 3 parts.
The Doctor's past is also brought into question. Doctor Who, I hear you ask. And it's quite interesting. You know, I think we've had 2 really good stories to start the season off with here, that we talked about in our previous installment of talking about. We've got to the 3rd story. This is the one, if you like, that is really sitting on top of the 25th anniversary. And I'm afraid to say this one for me just falls a little bit flat, doesn't quite hit the mark that the previous 2 stories had achieved. You know, it's got a lot of things going for it here. You've got a great setup with the sort of, you know, the mystery of the comet. You've got Cybermen, you've got neo-Nazis, and you've got some characters from the 1600s, and all thrown together in a story or a quest to, get hold of the Silver Nemesis. Should have really brought with it in three episodes a little bit more drama than I felt it did. And unfortunately for me, this story falls flat and doesn't quite reach the heights of what we had so far.
I think I might have said that Jason's dead to me before now. I mean, it's probably worth just popping that back out there again. James, are you a fan of the Silver Nemesis?
Yes, I am, absolutely. And Jason, you missed out the 2 key characters of the skinheads. My favourite Doctor Who line, what are you, social workers? I mean, that, just for that alone, it's brilliant. I mean, come on, you've got neo-Nazis, you've got Cybermen, you've got, like you say, Lady Painfort, you've got all of these things. What more could you want? I love how it's they're all got their own weaknesses against each other. So, the Cybermen are obviously, I would say the gold thing is a little bit overused in this, but you've got the Cybermen who can't go near gold, so they're relying on someone else and taking out Lady Painfort. See, I like the fact that they all are vulnerable to one another. And again, you've got the Doctor sat in the middle of all of this, very subtly manipulating people. He goes back off in time to leave, calculations that will help Lady Painfort get to that point. He knows when the rocket's going to be landing, although he says he's forgotten. there's some really nice mixture of, again, on location shooting. So, it benefits from that. I love the bit where they're running across the bridge being fired at and they jump into the river. Later on, you've got the gasworks, which is now, where they built the Millennium Dome in the end. That's sadly no longer there. But I think it was quite, locations were done really well. And all right, it's a celebration. It's the 25th. And I like the way that they sort of bring in the element of 25. So the rocket goes round every 25 years. But this does mark a moment where they're really trying to change who the Doctor is, or insinuate there's more to the Doctor. And you've got the statue that sort of has told Lady Painfort his secrets, and you tantalizingly close, where she says, well, I'll tell everybody. And he's just like, who's going to care? You sort of thing. And as the audience, you're like, I want to know. I want to, and Ace is quite in sort of inquisitive about it as well at the end. So I just, there's a lot about this I do like, around the story and around the characters.
I think come the day that I do the book on what people are like to work with at conventions, I'll be like Lady Painfort, and I'll be like, I'll tell them, and they're like, we don't care anymore. Fiona is an incredible performance in this. I think she's. I mean, it's just big, and it gets bigger. I think it's amazing, and she's got such craziness and darkness and power all the way through. I mean, even when she's having to do the most ridiculous things and hitchhiking, she's still got a lot. She's got the dignity there, which is incredible. And the beautiful little subtle bits, like when she's sat in the bus stop and she's just singing to herself because she's completely crazy, and it's great. I live for the Fiona and Gerald Murphy. They're the interplay that is amazing. And then obviously when the star of the season arrives, she surely does, honey.
She surely does.
And here she is, the fabulous Dolores Gray, as camp as Christmas, eh? How about that?
I mean, the car journey is just incredible. It was the slow poison. Oh God! I think this is probably where Silver Nemesis divides its audience quite cleanly down the middle. If you adore Dolores and all that nonsense, then you're gonna love Silver Nemesis. If you're like, who the heck is this and why she turned up here? That's it. You've not got Silver Nemesis. So I think that's my litmus on it, I would imagine. I mean, it's quite a specific thing to know who Dolores is, and if you've got to be a fan of a certain period of musical theatre, as John Nathan Turner obviously was. But it's amazing. It's just amazing that she's in. I mean, there's no reason for her to be there. There's no sort of call for it, but it's incredible.
You almost wondered if she knew what she was signing up for.
I fear she was offered a limo and a driver and a day out and some champagne. She said, "Oh, yes." I think it sort of shows, but incredible. I think Sophie has memories of her sort of having the wig and the thing to lift and all that sort of stuff. Immaculate, but yeah, there's so many bits of element, just things. It's a romp, it's camp. I think if you've got the camp sensibility for this, then it's amazing. If you haven't, then it's quite an awkward 75 minutes. I can remember watching this at the time, and obviously as a child, the sensibilities of it being camp aren't there. My brother's favourites were the Cybermen, so I remember there was a bit of joy that the Cybermen turn up at the end. And slightly, I'd say the Cybermen have sort of devolved over the years, insofar as in Earthshock, they have to grind Adric's star into to kill them off. Now it's a catapult and boof, they're down. So they sort of weakened a little bit. But then that's quite an iconic thing with the whole catapult and all those scenes. So I think they look great, but I suppose they have slightly weakened. But I mean, David Banks always gives a good performance as the cyber leader, and Mark Hardy. So I think like a cyber story, and it looks great. I mean, it must have been bloody scorching because the weather on this is full sunshine. But I love Silver Nemesis, as you probably guessed I would.
Mm. This was the one I had in the green VHS, you know, the silver, the limited edition green casing for the VHS, and it had like the background. I even love watching that. I even, you know, watched that and then watched the documentary afterwards where they showed where they filmed it and how they did some of the scenes, and you know, talking about obviously that it was set. It was filmed in Arundel, but it was set in Windsor, and you know, all those little things around the production value. I just think that there are so many memorable bits, you know, where they're in the vaults looking for the bow and arrow, and then sort of the lights flash on and off, and he's wearing a fez. Then later on, they've got the bow and they're following it to the arrow, and they're sort of TARDIS in the middle of nowhere, and they're off sort of laughing, joking. Then they come across the two skinheads who are upside down in their pants, and just, which, you know, for a younger me, wasn't too disturbed by that scene at all. But you know, it just, there's loads of little bits, and it is only 3 parts, you know, so it doesn't linger too long. But like you say, they have this whole bit where she's in the car. And you know, if you were sort of doing the production for this, you might be like, oh, do we really need that? It takes, you know, 5 minutes out of an episode. But I just think it's brilliant. And you do see, you know, Fiona, the character becomes more and more unhinged, you know, to the end where she's like walking around going, all things will be mine, and it sort of, you know, just throws herself onto the statue. And I just think that's it's just great. Her performance is brilliant, you know. Yeah, really do like this story.
And they miss a trick because it's on the making of, isn't it, where she's like, my first role was 25 years ago as a villainess in space. It's like, why the Jiminy was she not in Day of the Doctor? She could have been Queen Elizabeth. I mean, I don't care. Why the heck did they not get her in there to just make that complete, that she was in first, 25th, 50th? It's a rotten thing that they didn't get her in. I shall forever not like Day of the Doctor for that.
Yeah.
I want my license fee back. Anton Diffring gives his performance. I think that's it's the performance you sort of expect. You can sort of tell maybe that he doesn't really know what this is all about, but he's gonna do his performance, and that's the performance he gave in quite a lot of things. But it suits it. He doesn't overdo it. Yeah, I just think it's fun. It's like I don't think it necessarily makes oodles of sense if we're going to break it down. I can, do you know what? I sort of don't care that it doesn't make sense. I'm just going to forgive it for Fiona Walker and Dolores, really.
I think yeah, if you analyze it too much, you probably will see the plots. But I think it's a huge set piece for, once again, the Doctor setting up someone to destroy. You know, he sets the whole thing up to destroy the cyber fleet, and you have that manipulation. Even though there's other characters around, and he has to get those characters into play so he can unite all the bits of the statue. When you look at it in the cold heart of day, he's engineered the whole thing just for that moment. And again, that's that side of him where he, you know, you feel like he's going around tying up loose ends, or he's going around doing these things to say, in this case he knows that Earth is going to be attacked, so he's doing it to save Earth. But there's more to it, and it's certainly in this episode more heavily labored that there's more to it.
There's also, I mean, there are a lot of similarities plot-wise, I suppose, with Remembrance. I know there was a lot of talk at the time that they couldn't go next to each other because essentially it's something coming from space, landing, being manipulated, being sent back up and destroying it's quite similar. Because the ordering, and this is what always boggles, the ordering's slightly out, isn't it? Because Grace show wasn't meant to be the end, but they wanted Silver Nemesis to be the anniversary story. So then you get Ace has the ring before she's found the earring before she's found the earring.
Yeah.
Leslie French is in this, isn't he? And that was quite important to get him in because he was a potential first Doctor, wasn't he?
He was indeed a potential first Doctor, and it might have been a very, very small part, but I think he gives a nice little performance, and it's a nice touch, like you said. It's the 25th anniversary story. Bring somebody in who could have been up for the role, I think, to start with.
I could build a flying machine.
They drain him of blood. It's quite, I mean, for two comedy characters, it's quite a horrible thing that they do to him, really. And obviously the chess set thing then pays off the season after with Curse of Fenric, because it's Fenric that's moving the pieces.
Yeah.
Advanced warning there. Yeah, it's a nice nod. It's a nice little part, really. But it is interesting that the two characters. But again, what I would say is that we have this thing that we talked about Sharda quite recently. Is that Gerard's character he's a murderer and a vagabond, but at the end he survives and he can just play loot with his girlfriend. All's forgiven. Do you know what I mean? It's quite a strange end to it.
Kind of gets redeemed, but you're not quite sure why he's been redeemed, because he's kind of like, well, we know you've been involved in all of this. I'm assuming that it's like Lady Painfort was the evil influence, and we'll give him a second chance and just give him a lift home. It's a good character though. I like Richard.
Because when we talked about Remembrance, I should have said, actually, one of the things I really like about Remembrance is that it ends with the funeral. It's actually quite a somber end, and it ends with the funeral. And did we do good? But I like that, and again, I think Happiness Pro has quite a somber ending, really, because it ends with the release of grief for Helen A. So this is the first kind of they all lived happily ever after sort of diddly dee, isn't it? It's kind of, but I suppose that fits with the story, because the story isn't really a heavily laden doomy thing, is it? And Sylvester has a little wink to the camera, doesn't he? For
yeah.
Who are you?
I mean, I love the cliffhanger as well, where the cyber ships turn up when he's looking at the new scanner, and he's like, there's just so many like little bits. Ace blows up the ship. He goes, are you not carrying around any Nitro 9, are you? She's like, no. Mm-hmm. Good, blow up that spaceship. It's just the two of them again. I love the camaraderie between them in this story. That they set off. They're sort of looking for the statue. He just lets her defend him with a, like you say, with a slingshot and a couple of gold coins. That's it. He's a whole troop of Cybermen come in, and he's just like fiddling around with the rocket sled. But again, I think that just shows that he trusts her, and he's just like, she can get on with it on her own, and she is developing into this really strong character, which I really love.
Those scenes at the end in the warehouse up on the gantries. Oh my word!
Oh yeah,
that is not something that I know. Sophie said it was a little bit at the time to do, but my word, you can actually see that's not so solid.
No, it's quite an impressive set piece there. There's not an awful lot of health and safety having gone on there, because you can genuinely see how high it is with how small the TARDIS prop is on the floor of the warehouse or air hangar that they were in. I think it's a great scene. That I think there's a lot of jeopardy in there.
You get like a Cyberman exploding and dropping from the gantry, don't you? It's quite.
Yeah, it's a little bit like when they hurl the costume off the Guinness factory in The Invasion, though, isn't it? It's one of those moments where you look and go, there's not a lot of cyber in there unless he's had a bit of a diet before he's gone down. Yeah,
it's quite grisly when the sort of Cybermen are tricked into going into the rocket sled boosters. And burnt that way. That's quite gruesome as well. And it even like hides her face, but she's just been up destroying a whole load of them with gold coins. It's kind of like, do you really need to do that? But yeah, it's good.
So, do we have any exciting facts on Doctor Who and the Silver Nemesis?
Not so much. We've covered quite a few of the ones that I was going to mention. There was the bit of the castle where there's a tour guide and a group of people. There were some sort of like Doctor Who people within that group. So Andrew Morgan, Catherine Bidmean, Fiona Cumming, Peter Moffat, Kevin Clark, who wrote it, Nick Courtney. They were all like wandering around.
Margot Hayhoe. The legend that is Margot Hayhoe is there as well.
Yeah. So that's quite nice as well, that they were there as part of it. But yeah, lots of rumours that they'd asked members of the royal family if they would make cameo appearances. But obviously that never happened.
I think, did they not ask Prince Edward because they'd been told he was a fan, and it came back a bit of a
fan of the arts?
Yeah, it was Prince Edward that they wrote to, and then there was a very polite thanks but no thanks came back. But I think they wove it in quite well in the end by having the sort of lookalike Queen with the corgis at a distance. So we did get a bit of royalty in there in the end, didn't we?
It reminds me slightly of a story I read recently about The Good Life, where it was the Queen's Silver Jubilee, I think, and so they wanted to do the command performance, and they asked the Queen apparently what her favourite series was, and she said The Good Life. So it caused all manner of problems because the series sort of finished, so they had to bring it back to do an episode just for the Queen. And then when she arrived at Television Centre, she met Felicity Kendall's son and said, "Hi, I'm Felicity Kendall's son." And the Queen asked, "Who's Felicity Kendall?" It's like, big fan of The Good Life, big fan of The Good Life. I don't think you are you, Queenie? So I think it's one of those things, I suppose, because they always did that thing that the royal family watched Doctor Who at Christmas and stuff, didn't they? So people are like, have they got a copy of Marco Polo and all that kind of thing? Is it at Windsor Castle waiting in the vaults? But I suppose if you hear that and you ask, and then they say thanks but no thanks, you go to the next best thing. And she was your go-to queen, wasn't she, at the time?
Yeah.
So on the subject of go-to, on the subject of go-to queens.
I was also going to say, actually, I also enjoyed the inclusion of Courtney Pine at the beginning of this story as well. I think it was quite a nice light-hearted way to start the story off by having the Doctor and Ace having a relax and listening to some specially written jazz music, actually, for this particular story.
Mm-hmm. First time.
I hate jazz music. Why couldn't they have gone to a Kylie concert and got Minogue a bit earlier? What's wrong with them?
It was the first time that they'd commissioned music for many, many years for the classic series. I think there was another episode where they put a bit of extra music in. But yeah, for this one, it was specially commissioned. Although it's a bit odd because this is supposed to be set like in late November, and they're all in the garden wearing shorts and short sleeve shirts.
It's freak weather conditions. We did this with remembrance. It's probably the Cyber Fleet when it's not the Dalek fleet. This just next to them. The Cyber Fleet are also affecting the weather. So everyone's like, "Oh, it's quite mild for November. Let's go to an outdoor jazz concert."
But yeah, it's just a minor thing.
Nothing's inexplicable, just unexplained.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go on then, let's have some scores for Doctor Who and the Silver Nemesis.
Go on, Jason, you can go first on this.
Happy to go first on this one, absolutely. So I said at the top of the piece on this one, it for me, story falls a little bit flat. I'll qualify it to a degree insofar as I think you're right. There are some elements in this. If you look too closely at the plot, I think some of the plot bits don't quite add up. However, there are some fabulously brilliant bits in this as well. And obviously, you've got to say Dolores Gray. The inclusion of her, I think, is a real masterstroke of I think just a bit of genius, really, for them to end up doing something like that. I think there's some great scenes throughout. I think you're right. You've talked about a lot of them. You've got the comedy of Painfort. You've got Anton Differing being Anton Differing. You've got some Cybermen who are quite weakened, and I do think the gold element is too overused in this story for me, so it does weaken the enemy a little bit. But the main cast and the guest cast all work well together. So in summary, for me, it's a silver anniversary, silver Nemesis story, and I'm going to be giving this one 6.5.
I didn't know there was like a silver connection coming up then, because there was a lot of silver in that summary.
I thought you were going to say
I just thought I'd get
silver
silver in one
yeah.
last time. I thought I just wanted to get silver in one more time, but yeah, there isn't anything you can tie silver up with 6.5. So it's a silver 6.5. I've given it.
A silver 6 would have been a nice bit of alliteration.
But I'm being generous because I think a 6.5 is deserved here.
Okay. James, have you got any better alliteration for him?
I surely do. I absolutely adore this story, and I think for a 25th anniversary, sometimes the anniversary stories get a bit bogged down in too much, or this is one of the first we haven't got a multi-doctor story in this instance. It's standing on its own feet. I think on the basis of the stories we've already reviewed, we can see the character development, particularly with the Doctor, starting to really come to the forefront. And so for me, cheers everybody, it's another 10.
I did not see that coming.
Love it. This and Remembrance, I have watched over and over and over again. I remember watching it at the time and actually finding it scary. All the Cybermen bits were quite scary. And then, I would only have been 10 when the video came out. So that was Easter 93. I've been 10. And again, it's one I devoured. I didn't like the video because it didn't match all the other spines. Even at a young age, those things are haunting, aren't they? It was just, what were they thinking with that foily green? Yes, green and silver, wasn't it? Green and silver, and
with a pink logo. It was the most. Someone had a great sort of Christmas break and had a few shandies and thought, I'll design it now. But yeah, absolutely loved it, watching it over and over, and the making of, as you said before, is almost as iconic as the show itself, and those little bits of joy where it's like, we decided to put it's silver anniversary, we decided to put the Cybermen in because they're silver. It's like, I want to be at that production meeting. So yeah, in a world where we've trashed the Deadly Assassin, I am going to give Silver Nemesis 9.
Yay!
It's a fine 9 for Silver Nemesis.
Very, very fine indeed.
So that finishes Silver Nemesis up on 25.5.
Good score.
Good score. Because it's the 25th anniversary story.
Ooh.
See, if Jason had stuck to his Silver 6, it would have got 25. The 25th anniversary story from season 25. Anyway, ruined it for us all. We are now off to our season finale. Get your tents out. It is the greatest show in the galaxy.
Oh, I was waiting for you to do the hand gesture.
Hand gesture.
Yeah. Shall I go? Is it my turn, Jason? I don't want to go out of turn, So
can we just before you even start here, as much as I appreciate the cosplaying of Dolores, what was wrong with Peggy Mountain, her old fruit?
You weirdos. She was in the publicity for it in the Radio Times. There was a picture with Sylvester and Peggy Mountain saying, "Will
Big
Peggy
star."
Mountain?" I know. So we're off to the psychic circus to entertain the gods of Ragnarok, or alternatively, send in the killer clowns. Not one for anyone who's got any clown phobia, which apparently Sophie Aldred is not a fan of clowns, and so this was probably not the greatest story for her to be in. It's This is the story that I alluded to on an earlier recording, which was potentially in danger of not being completed due to an asbestos scare. So we'll come on to that a little bit later about how they got around it. But this one was beset by a few production issues. However, I think what they ended up with works quite well, and it wasn't necessarily what they originally planned. And some people said it was probably better than what they originally planned because they had to change some of the scenes. But yeah, it's again, it's another story where you've got the Doctor seemingly stumbling into this situation where there is, in this case, you've got the gods of Ragnarok that are killing people who come to the psychic circus. They're, devouring their energy or destroying them. And the Doctor has decided that this must come to an end, and he's going to stop them. So again, you've got that element that he's gone there with a purpose. But you've also got a great supporting cast around that who have all got their own ambitions and their own motivations. So it's not necessarily plain sailing, because there's other people who are working to their own agenda. I'll hand it over.
Oh,
Go on, Jason, take the baton.
that was quite the summary there. I mean, yeah. I think this story plays well for Sylvester, actually, because you've got that sort of dark and that sort of menacing that's coming through. But he also gets to have an awful lot of fun in this while he's doing the sort of circusy bits later on. So, he's playing to his strengths right the way through this story. You're right, beset with some issues through production, but a better story, I think, realized as a result of it. And this is one of those times when the troubles behind the scenes, I think, brought the cast and the production team together to a real good, solid unit to be able to pull off, I think, what essentially is a really good script here. There's some intelligent undertones in this one, and again, I'm not a lover of clowns, so I'm on the wavelength here with Sophie on this one. That I actually find clowns' faces just really, really spooky, scary, and I think a lot of that's down to it for me. I think not having been a lover of horror films as I've grown up. So for me, I think this is a good story. It's a good, solid story. It's got as you said already, a great guest cast list. Peggy, man, is adorable in whatever she's in, and she is hamming it up and loving every minute of this little sort of role that she's got there. But you've got lots of other notable cast in them. We'll talk about them, but obviously having T.P. McKenna coming into any production is going to add some gravitas to it. But it's the regulars who are carrying this, and a massive, massive shout out to Ian Reddington, who plays the chief clown so perfectly well. I know we've done the hand gestures, but there's so little script for him, and he is playing this role, and he's making that role his own and owns it all the way through. And it's a real commendation to him, I think, in this particular story. So yeah, for me, one that I like. I think it's a good, solid story, and we'll talk further about it as we go through.
I think I'm Ian Reddington, amazing performance. I find the chief clown quite sexy. I don't know what that says. I don't know what that says about me.
I don't think we've got time to unpick that. But
yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll move on quickly. The funny thing about me, I got married 3 times at school to 3 different girls. You used to have the ceremonies in the playground and all that stuff. My second wife, Louise, you were for a while after anyway, her favourite Doctor Who she'd always talk about was this one. She'd like, I like the one with the clowns. She'd always ask me about. So, even when I sort of visit home after university, she'd be like, I want to see the one with the clowns. I'm like, well, it's on video now. I can remember the moment it came over, I was like, you can buy the video and watch it again. So it's slightly strangely synonymous with it being her only Doctor Who story that she knew about. Yeah, I find it slightly difficult, The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, because I feel that I should really like it. Chief clown feelings aside, I should really like this because I like so many parts of it, and I don't. I actually find it quite a chore to get through. I don't engage with it, and when I watched it this week to sort of do this review, I mean, I watched all of them, but I particularly paid extra care to this because I was mindful that actually this is a story that I don't feel that I enjoy. Remembrance, I know for a fact that I really like. Silver Nemesis, I know I really like. Happiness for All, I know, this one I've never really felt that it's one I put on. And I don't quite know why, because the performances are all so strong. Even you've got Jessica Martin as Mags, and Chris Jury and Chris Gard, even Dean has a bit part at the start. There's so many good performances in it. Peggy Mount does a good performance. I mean, it's and yeah, it's still for me. I kind of go, I don't dig it. I don't engage with it. And I honestly, I would love to give you some insight as to why that is, but it just sort of falls flat for me. And this is the story I mentioned earlier, actually, about having had such strong cliffhangers in the previous stories. And I think Silver Nemesis, where you got the reveal of the Cyber Fleet and all that, the Cybermen. This one, there's quite a few cliffhangers where it feels like it just stops. I mean, the first episode where they just arrive, they're like, let's go on in. It's kind of like, well, yeah, of course you're going to go on in, because otherwise it's going to be a bloody empty four-parter, isn't it? But there isn't a peril to it. And I found that was something that sort of grated with me, that you didn't get a cliffhanger of, crikey, how's this going to resolve? They all felt a bit like it just stopped.
That first cliffhanger is one of the points I had on my notes, because it feels like it's almost like a 45-minute format that they've then separated out, because it doesn't feel like a cliffhanger at all. It just feels like they've gone, what point can we just cut it so that we can then do the next episode? And I almost think it would be better to watch it all in one rather than to watch it in the episodes, because you're right. I think in the other stories they've got some really memorable cliffhangers. In this one, it the story ticks along quite nicely, and we've got, like you say, some really nice performances. The real cliffhanger is probably the one where Mag starts to transition when they're in the ring, and that's probably the first time you feel that menace, if you like. But certainly on the first one, it's like, are we going in or not? And it's like, not. Next story. Let's move on to the next season. It's like, I see what you mean with that, and it is odd. You almost want there to have been maybe a scene in the circus where someone had gone in and then been destroyed, and that was the end of it. You sort of, the Doctor was talking up, going to the circus, then you saw someone killed in the ring, and then that was the cliffhanger. I think it is a little bit weak on that respect.
I mean, it looks great. I mean, we said about the strike action. Obviously, it's set in a tent, so you can film it in a tent, and that's actually probably slightly more realistic than a tent in a studio. Just having it helps it. So it looks great, and the clowns look great. The makeup for the werewolves, I can find lots of nice things about it, but it's just what would you think about WizKid? Because obviously WizKid is a very subtle attempt to deride a Doctor Who fan, I feel sure.
Yes, I think so. I think for me, we talk about sort of T.P. McKenna's sort of like role as Captain Cook. He is very, he is another manipulator. He's another one who's like, I'm here for myself. I've got my own agenda. And it's quite ruthless. He knows that whoever goes into the ring is going to be killed. And this, you've got this young lad who's, supposed to be sort of a parody of Doctor Who fans. who's sat there with his bow tie and is chatting away, and he's quite happy, and he's like, why don't you go on first? Why don't you go into the ring, knowing full well that he's going to be killed, but he just does it, and again, it just shows that kind of darker side. I didn't really necessarily pick up on the fact that it was supposed to be a Doctor Who fan when I first watched it. It's more obvious now when I watch it as an adult, but I still think the way that the kid is dispatched, he loves the circus, and he's come all this way to be there, and gets killed off.
He does the line, doesn't he? I know it's not as good as it used to be, but I still enjoy it all the same. I think it's something like that, isn't it? That's the crushing line that you can tell that someone in the production office has gone, we've had that letter. So I think yes, there is a very particular type of fan. I think that can be attributed to. Whether including that in the actual show itself is an act of kindness, I'm not sure.
He'll always be Adrian Mole to me.
Yeah.
I mean, again, though, another big name for the cast, isn't it? Really, in a lot of ways. And obviously, a big shout out for Janet Hargreaves as Mad Rosemary Hunter from Crossroads.
But that's the theme really for this season, and pretty much for you could almost say that the JNT years. Realistically, the ambition of all of their guest casts was always really beyond where they should ever have hoped for. I mean, they were getting some big names that were signing up to wanting to be part of Doctor Who, or they were enticed. They weren't throwing lots of money at them, I'm sure, but you can define this era by its guest casts, and I don't think there's many of these stories that we've talked about from the JNT era where we haven't sat there and said, actually, well, this is a great cast. Wow, this is this person's great. This person's great. We've talked about stunt casting. There's certainly no stunt casting going on in any of this season. Well, maybe Dolores Gray, but I don't even think that was stunt casting. That was just a perfect opportunity. But if you think back, you look at this, there isn't a bad guest cast throughout this entire season. So, I think it shows that there was an ambition behind the scenes in the production of these things to make them, as good as we possibly could do.
Yeah, I think the difference between 24, 25 is that whereas you have big name casting in 24, the big name casting isn't always directed in the right fashion. So performances may vary, and it's not a reflection on these people because they're very talented people. But whereas you have what I consider a very strange turn from Richard Briers in Paradise Towers, in this, T.P. McKenna's absolutely on the money. He's even when he has to come back and do the dead acting,
Yeah.
He doesn't start doing the "I am back from the dead." You don't get that. It's all it's all very well done. And I think
he's still telling the stories, isn't he? He's like, I remember when I did this, and throws himself into the pit. It's just like,
which I suppose equally, given that WizKids are a cruel take on a Doctor Who fan, there's an argument to be said that his character's a cruel take on the Doctor Who actor in some ways, with the anecdoting and the manipulation of the fan, maybe. And maybe I've never encountered anyone like that. Obviously. All things shall be mine. I'll write the names down that way. Yeah, I mean the thing, I know it's spawned sequels since. I think Jessica as Max is slightly underused on screen. I think more could have been made of that character, especially because she pairs up well with Sylvester. As I say, it has gone on to multiple things. I mean, there's audios, and Jessica herself has done comic strips for it. So it's nice that actually this has gone on to have a future life, and themes from it have gone on. I still can't bring myself to like it. I wouldn't put it on again in a hurry if I didn't have to, which is What do you like about it? Or I mean, you both seem to like it. Well, what do you take as being positives from it?
I like the fact that you've got, the gods of Ragnarok and what they've been doing, and again, it's similar in the same way that the Doctor sort of went in and did a regime change with the Happiness Patrol. He knows that there's evil there, and when he's doing, you're right, quite right, Jason. It gives him an opportunity to do like magic and to do all his performance arts things. Although apparently he was asked to juggle and he wasn't able to juggle, but that was like the one thing that he couldn't do. But playing the spoons and all the other things, and Jeffrey Durham helped him with the music. The magic parts, where he's doing the magic tricks and the sleight of hand. And I like that, but you can see he's like looking at his watch because he has manipulated everything. He's timed everything, even though, the characters are like Ace has gone off to try and get Kingpin back, all of those things. He's just looking at his watch. And I would say that to me just shows his manipulation, that he's right where he wants to be in front of them. He knows he's going, at this point, he's quite almost overly confident. And in this season, that's when you see that streak coming out. And in the next season, that's when you start to see him more directly manipulating Ace, for example. This season, he's like manipulating everybody around him so that he can dispatch the baddie.
But everyone except Ace, whereas next season,
everyone except Ace,
it becomes more darker. Obviously, the costume changes, and obviously that direction changes. I agree with you. He's in a commanding position throughout this season, and it doesn't drop off at all. And it is a side to the character that we'd not seen in any kind of great way like this at all. Obviously there'd been hints of it in 24, but it's really this season where it hits its stride and it becomes a thing. I think the thing about this story is, and it's a bit like the other stories in this season, there's so many strong visuals. There's some great multi-layered scripting that's going on in this, and the fact that they had the problem where they couldn't go and film indoors. I just think the fact that you're on location, and it's a beautiful location for the planet's surface. The fact that you've got that sort of exterior tent, and you've just got a good strong cast that are all just working together against the odds behind the scenes and in front of the camera. I just think it gels it and brings it together and just makes it quite a coherent production. One that I wouldn't say I've watched many times over the years, but it's one that I for this review, again, a bit like P-Bal said, I had to sit down and revisit this carefully as I came through it, because it's not a story I'm as familiar with as I would be others. But I think it fits well in this season, and it's got that complexity underneath it, with the Doctor as the central pivot point of everything else that's going on around him with that manipulation piece. So yeah, it just makes it an enjoyable story.
I was going to say the scene where he walks away and there's the explosion behind him.
Oh.
He's like, I've done
flinch.
Here. He doesn't flinch. He just literally just walks towards the camera. Explosion in the background. The tent is collapsing. He's like, right, let's go and have a cup of tea and carry on. Yeah. That scene, considering you have that horrible cliffhanger earlier on where he's like, shall we go in or not? Then you have that scene and you're like, well, hang on a second, where was that, a couple of episodes ago?
I mean, a shout out to the last hurrah for the TARDIS set, which Battlefield, you just get console and a bit of a flat beat. It's the last, because you don't get much in the way of TARDIS scene, do you, in the McCoy era in particular? I mean, so it's quite interesting to see sort of Doctor and Ace and digging out the scarf and all that sort of stuff.
I did laugh at the junk mail drone as well, that somehow manages to get inside the TARDIS without any issues at all.
And answers back.
And he is the junk mail bot that manipulates Ace, because he says, are you scared? And she's like, I'm not scared of anything. That's the kind of thing you see in the next season, the Doctor doing, going, oh, let's revisit your past and let's visit the things that you don't like. So yeah, you see that element. And again, it's just a nice, I think she's got like Bonnie's blue outfit. I think Tom's scarf appears. She's sort of throwing things out of a cupboard. So yes, it's very, in this season, it's pretty much the only TARDIS scene, but it's quite nice. It's a little short bit.
I suppose the theme runs, doesn't it, in this on a base confronting her fears, which is what's carried on. And instead of her confronting them, the Doctor sort of forcing her into confronting them next year. Because there's the bit, isn't there, in Silver Nemesis where she's like, I've not chickened out before, but I really don't want to do this. He's like, oh, go back to the TARDIS. She's like, okay. So, yeah. It's sort of a continuation, I guess. But I remain to be convinced. Do we have any more facts on the greatest show in the galaxy?
Just the one, the bus with the killer conductor, and I'm sure that will some people will like or hate that one. It's the same bus from Delta and the Bannerman, and it was so dilapidated they actually ended up with permission to leave it where it was because they couldn't move it. So yeah, it's a bit of reusing, a bit of recycling.
And then there's another big explosion that Mike Tucker was responsible for when he blew the conductor up. And it was one hell of an explosion again.
Conductor, obviously the lovely Dean, who's also in Time Lash.
Yeah.
But more visibly so. Okay, are we going to head to our final scores? Okay.
So
shall I start for the finale? Yeah. Shall I go wild?
Go for it.
Okay. I can't get my head onto it. I don't hate it by any means, and I've said a lot of the elements I like, a lot of the performances I like, and I'm happy just to go on that. And I like the look of it. I just don't. There's something. So for me, the greatest show in the galaxy ends with a 5. Do that. I'll try to keep myself contained.
The clown thing. I did his facial expressions. It just, and his little nods and his ticks. Oh, just he is genuinely creepy to watch, but very, very good. Just like.
Right.
Descended into chaos of just waving.
I'll go next if you like. So yeah, I think this is a good end to the season. I've talked already at some of the things I like about this. I think it's a strong guest cast. I think there's a good complex script under there. Yeah, it's not without its faults in some areas, but it's certainly it might have one or two iffy cliffhangers, but as far as I'm concerned, I think there's enough there to keep me interested for 4 episodes. I think particularly as I'm a little spooked out by clowns anyway, so it makes it that little bit of a tougher watch for me. But I do think that Ian Reddington's performance is top notch in this, and with the other guest cast and the regulars being on absolute top form, I'm going to be giving Greatest Show in the Galaxy a very healthy 7.5.
Not a solid. I thought your 7s were solid.
The 7 is a solid. It's healthy if you go to a 7.5.
It's good to have the Booper grading.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, James, where are you at on the greatest show in the galaxy? The greatest show in the galaxy.
I'm going to channel my my inner Peggy Mount for this moment and say, what are you, weirdos? I do like this story. It is not up there, unfortunately, with Remembrance and Silver Nemesis. However, it is a reasonably strong end to a brilliant season for all the reasons that I've already described. I love seeing the character development as we go through this season into the next one. Yes, it could have had a better cliffhanger. Yes, there are some things that I would tweak about it, but I still gave it 8.
Don't feel hate. He's given it an 8.
I have.
Wow, that's a good score.
So, drum rolls or synth snare from Kevin McCulloch. The results are in. So, in fourth place, it's The Greatest Show in the Galaxy on 20 and a half.
Wow, I'm quite surprised by that.
Third place, we have The Happiness Patrol, Happiness Will Prevail, on 23 and a half. Second place, 25 and a half. It's Silver Nemesis. It surely is. Which means it seems a bit obvious from the outset, actually, but it is a remembrance of the Daleks with a perfect 30, which tops our season 25.
A well-deserved perfect 30 as well in that one.
You agree, James? He's been stunned into silence.
No, I absolutely agree. I didn't. I think, I'm surprised. Greatest Show is last, but actually, from the comments that we made, I do understand that. For me, this is one of my favourite seasons overall. I can watch again and again and again, and it is sad, as you were saying earlier on, that there's only sort of 4 stories, because this was when it was really hitting such a good stride, and we all know what was around the corner, sadly. But yeah,
Battlefield.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Search out science. Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me for that journey through season 25.
Pleasure as always.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
I hope you all enjoyed that, and James's wig, and we shall see you very soon. Goodbye.